You are watching Double Doinkers Fantasy Football Podcast with Nic, and Willie, J. This week we bring you tier list players and a whole lot of preseason news, which I can tell already the difference between last week and this week as far as like the excitement for fantasy football goes, because all of a sudden everything is ticked up. People are talking about it. There's people coming out of the woodworks. Our podcasts have more listens than they've had in the past forever, because you know what? Once preseason football starts, everyone goes, "Oh, that's right. This rocks. This is the best." And
it's happening.
I forgot how cool it was. And now I'm watching and I'm like, wow, I have energy. Every single fan base right now is like, we could do it. We could be the ones. We could actually make this work. You know, this is peak hope for almost every team. And it'll all crash down soon enough. As a matter of fact, it already has. We're going to talk about a lot of news, and a lot of it's pretty dark and grim for a lot of these players. But you got to understand, you got to wade through the dark and the grim if you want to win, because you know, they're not going to do it for you. You can still, I'm pretty sure you can still draft some of these IR players right now in the 5th and 6th or paid, round, and ESPN don't care. Sleeper doesn't care. They're not going to give you that slot back. They can't. Doesn't work that way. Anyway, hey, so let me introduce the host. I am Nic. We talked about the Raiders preseason game before, and I was very excited for it. I'm still very excited for it. With me is Willie. What's going on, Willie?
What's up, Nic? Yeah, I get, adulthood is being a thing, and like sometimes you need to draft a little bit early if not everyone's available, but I just wait until like after the first 2 weeks of preseason to draft. That's my league strategy. I mean, I'm in like 5 leagues, but like my main league strategy, and just because like injuries happen in training camp as it ramps up and preseason games, and like I get it though. Like if you have been doing this for years with your friends, and you have a family, or you can't get everyone together except for early August, like it makes sense to draft when you can, just to have everybody. But I mean, if you drafted some guys like like we'll talk about them that got injured in like the 8th, 9th round as your sleepers or whatever, it just kind of was a wasted pick.
Yeah, it sucks. I used to try really hard to get the date that worked best for everybody. You know, like make sure that, and it is so difficult as a commissioner to find that date. That it almost realistically doesn't exist. And if you try really hard, I get how you end up at the beginning of August. Just don't. Look, I'm telling you as a commissioner, just give up on it. It's not worth it. Okay, like now I do it the weekend before the NFL starts, and if you're busy, then you either draft from wherever you're at on your phone, or you get someone else to do it for you.
Yeah.
But as much as I want it to work out for everybody, I also know at a certain point, a whole bunch of adults are going to be obstinate about time. Yeah. And I'm not dealing with it. So I know like this year I had a whole argument about it with a bunch of people. And we ended up, we're going the Sunday before draft, and it's okay. We got there. And I was basically like, hey, look, if you can't make it, whatever, man. But if you're not going to try, whatever, that's on you. Deal with your auto draft team.
Yeah. You can always like flag players, like kind of create a list and then just like auto draft that way too. I've done that a couple times before. My main league is drafting on the 29th of August, which is a little bit early, but I think we have at least 10 of our 12 boys in person in Portland, and our commissioner is actually flying up from Sacramento. He lives in Sacramento. Shout out Colin, and he's really excited. So he's flying all the way in to do the draft, and we've been talking about this since January. So I'm just so excited.
Sick. Yeah, I love it. We ended up getting, if you count me, 7 of the people up here, and they're coming up to Eugene. So nice. They're from all over California at this point. But normally I'd fly out there. They decided to come up here this year. So
nice.
It's good. And like, also, if you're out there listening and you have a league with friends that you like and you haven't done this yet, just start making these things happen earlier. Makes it easier, and it makes it kind of more standard. And it's really important, I think, for friends groups. If you want to see these people for long times and you're moving all around, because people do. That's what happens with groups of people. They just move around. Best way to stay together is something like this.
It's amazing, like how many, like I have a really close friend group from college, and we all engage in group chats and hang out in person in Portland. But like the one thing that unites all of us consistently, like in terms of like reunions and communication, is fantasy football. Like a lot of us are just really, really into it, and it's unless somebody's getting married, we don't all get together in the same place. So it's
Yep.
like fantasy football and marriage are the two things that promote men's mental health.
Yeah, it's like for me, what it is that like shared experience, right? Because like you when you're in school with people, and this could be high school, it could be elementary, it could be in college, whatever, or if you're working with people, even you have shared experiences. But as you get older and you move around, you stop having those shared experiences. You have history together, but you still need something current to talk about because otherwise, that history, as it does eventually, just goes away. Not necessarily goes away, but it doesn't. You can't talk about the same thing for your whole entire life. You
Yeah,
can if you have different topics to infuse in there. If you're like, yeah, well, you remember that Cam Scadaboo dude? Did you see that crazy backflip he did? Okay, now also let's talk about our history. It's fun. Remember that? But if you don't have the shared experiences, eventually you drift, and that's why it is important. And hi, everyone, welcome to my fantasy football mental health podcast. Um, all that said, Willie, we have so much news. We
we
have
do.
so much news that we have to get through. So why don't we just go ahead and take us away? Let's get started. News on August 19th. What do we got?
Yeah, all right. So August 19th, we just had a couple today. I'll start with the two. I don't know if I want to say most intriguing signings, but yeah, actually probably the most intriguing signings. I don't really like either landing spot, but we'll get into it. It's interesting. Um, First off, the Indianapolis Colts signed Keenan Allen to a 1 year deal. Um, this one is okay. Well, I think above all, this is just me tripling down on my opinion on Lad McConkey this year. The one caveat to being so high on McConkey personally was that if Keenan Allen does return like he did last year, that just completely, eradicates the slot work that McConkey would get to such a like the high volume slot work that he would be getting. But now Keenan Allen is on the Colts, and this is primarily, I think, a depth piece signing because there's been injuries to Alec Pierce, struggling with an ankle sprain, and they lost Michael Pittman. But this does definitely affect Josh Downs' upside for me, and I also think that although I like the fit, I think that this caps Keenan Allen's potential upside. Like people were low on him last year because he was getting older, but his return to the Chargers was very underrated. Like most players struggled relative to ADP, but Keenan Allen was definitely one that did not. He didn't win leagues, but he paid dividends if you got him late last year, and a lot of people did. So if there are injuries to Josh Downs, if Pierce isn't fully healthy, Keenan Allen I think still has the potential in the role that he plays to do well in this offense. Daniel Jones notwithstanding, I think I have faith in Keenan Allen to be offense proof to an extent, just because he's really proven himself in the past, and he does play a very kind of unique role on the wide receiver core. But this definitely caps Josh Downs for me.
One thing that I have a question for with this piece of news is what is the connection between the current Colts and the Chargers of 2014, 15? Because why is it like Philip Rivers comes back late last season, then all of a sudden you got Keenan Allen signing with the Colts of all teams, and a lot of Colts could have used Keenan Allen.
Mm.
Well, okay, yes, also, but then a lot of teams could have used Keenan Allen. This couldn't have been the only place he could sign. But I think that does help Daniel Jones a little bit for me.
It does. It does. It raises his floor at the very least, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that team was starting to get a little weird with Alec Pierce and Josh Downs out. It's like, okay, well, who is he actually throwing to? Just Warren, and then Warren got hurt. Well, I guess I'm getting away some of the news here. Tyler Warren also got injured today.
I did not put that on my list. I forgot. I just saw
Okay.
that tweet like an hour ago. That just happened today. So yeah, he
Yeah,
did suffer a groin injury.
yeah. So, like, realistically, this is the one big issue: is either Jonathan Taylor is going to get the miles and miles of volume, or this offense is going to look pretty gnarly. So Keenan Allen sneaks in here, and with this news in particular, if Tyler Warren is also hurt, the middle of the field is going to be Keenan Allen's.
Yeah,
He could have a significant role, especially for really cheap. I think if you're drafting later, this might be not. He might be like closer to like eighth, ninth round, which hurts a little bit. But right now, he's probably nothing.
he's probably nothing. I mean, like if you get him before his ADP shoots up, that's amazing. I think that it's not going to get very high. I could see it being in the single digits, and he's a player that regardless of how you feel about the Colts offense, and I'm relatively low on it. Keenan Allen is just he's a player that no matter what you can put in your flex most weeks if he's healthy, and there's only upside there relative to where he's going.
Yeah, and his game doesn't rely super strongly on athleticism. That's what
Exactly.
helps it like age well. What do we got next? Who are we going to?
So yeah, the other interesting signing, and we talked about this a bit before, but I'm still struggling to understand the connection or the need really. But the Giants signed Najee Harris. Now Najee, of course, is coming off an Achilles tear, so he's probably not going to be ready to go week one. But of all the teams to sign Najee, this one makes some of the least sense to me. We talked, last week on the Sleepers video about Tyrone Tracy. This definitely it takes Tyrone Tracy off my sleepers list. Not like I'm not putting him on a do not draft list, but he's no longer as much of a sleeper to me because this is really a four-headed backfield. I don't. I understand that Cam Scadabo's health, maybe Tracy isn't quite up to par, or maybe they cut Devin Singletary. But I think regardless, Achilles injury or not, Najee Harris is better than an RB4, and he's a pretty solid RB3, and he can be an RB2 even with this stage in his career. He's not, he had some good games before his injury last year on the Chargers. So, I mean, like Najee Harris to the Lions would have made sense for depth. Najee Harris to the Commanders perhaps, or you could mention like 10 or 11, 12 other teams that would make more sense having a need for an RB3 or maybe an RB2. But the Giants, I don't get it.
Someone on that squad is not practicing or performing the way that Harbaugh wants them to. That's the feeling I get from this. So it scares me a little bit with both Cam Scadaboo and Tyrone Tracy. I don't think Devin Singletary is the linchpin in this signing. He could be, but
Yeah.
like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either which way. But Cam Scadaboo either is a little bit more hurt than we know, and also a bonehead, But I don't really believe that because he has the clearest talent out of anyone there. I think that
Yeah.
they're worried about Tyrone. I don't think that they like the way Tyrone Tracy's playing. And this is just feelings. There's nothing bad out there, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to go get Najee Harris unless there's something going on with one of your RB1 or RB2.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, like Harris is not just again, he's not the elite player he once was. He, not elite, but he's not an RB1 anymore. But he's still like a solid player. You can start him if he's good off his injury. I agree. I think that it's probably a combination of concerns about Scadabo's health and perhaps Tyrone Tracy not fitting the scheme quite as well as Harbaugh would like. I was actually listening to this podcast on my way home from work just a couple hours ago regarding. I don't know if there's any validity to this, but they're regarding like Tyrone Tracy being a possible trade candidate to a team like the Niners or the Packers. The Niners don't need more running backs, but Tyrone Tracy on the Niners makes a lot of sense in terms of the player he is. And if something were to happen with Jacobs and we don't know Marshawn Lloyd, like the Packers definitely need a running back too. So that was interesting. And if that is the case, then Tyrone could provide value somewhere else. But still a weird signing. There's a lot of murkiness about the Giants' backfield now.
Well, the thing to consider is just how Harbaugh has been using his running backs lately. He always has these ancient running backs that are just hanging around. He had Le'Veon Bell, he had Melvin Gordon, he had Mark Ingram. He's always had one of these ancient vets. And like, okay, I'm being unfair because Najee Harris isn't as old as these guys, but he plays as old as these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he just refuses to use a two-headed backfield. It's almost always three-headed, and it's in a gross way. Like someone has to be Derrick Henry, who gets pulled off the hill, pulled off of the field for Justice Hill, or pulled
Mm-hmm.
off the field for Melvin Gordon or whoever. In Sure, you may look last year and say, well, they didn't really have that third person. That's okay, but the years before they did, and they
Yeah.
consistently used all three. That was the really big issue with them. They would have used him again if Keaton Mitchell hadn't been injured his whole entire tenure in the Ravens.
Yeah, that was a big piece of why it was less of a competition last year. And of course, they had Derrick Henry, but they did still pull him at times. And I think the biggest piece here is that it's not even a three-headed monster; it's a four. There's four running backs that could potentially see a snap on every single drive, a carry on every single drive. I don't get it. I don't get it
That's what they call him. It's not Devin single carry for the whole game. It's Devin single carry per drive.
per drive.
Yeah. It's like we're just getting different units basically with Devin Singletary at this point. Weird one.
We'll see. The only other signing of note is on the defensive side. It's just Von Miller to the Cowboys. Nothing really here for fantasy, but I think it does at least suggest that the Cowboys could return to their fantasy defensive glory from a few years ago. They have some great pass rush rotation now with Von Miller, Rashawn Gary, the rookie Malachi Lawrence, and then Donovan Ezeraku. And they have Caleb Downs, their first round safety. He could be an amazing pick machine. He's just an incredible talent. So I'm not counting on the Cowboys to be a great fantasy defense, but I think if you're in like, if you wait until the last pick to take defense as you should, the Cowboys could be a sneaky like top 5 defense in fantasy this year. I'm not predicting that, but I could see it.
I think the way I'd look at it is they'll almost certainly not be drafted, and if they come out week one and have a blow up week with a lot of turnovers, just buy it, just jump
Yeah,
in.
I agree. I mean, I'm all about streaming defenses, but I think that, like you said, like if they do show up week one, week two, and I think if there's going to be consistent. If the defense shows up good, it's going to be consistent.
Yeah, here's and I won't talk a lot about defenses. It's not worth the time. But if I have a strategy with defenses, it's to draft whatever. It doesn't matter, honestly. The worst intended matchup for week one, and then just watch week one, and whoever on the waiver wire's defense actually looks like they're able to shut out the other team completely, and it's not just their offense sucking; it's their defense really stifling. I just pick them up, and that's worked out a lot. Like you've ended up with like the Cowboys that year, they were good. The Vikings the
The
first
Vikings,
year,
yeah,
they were good. Um, Last year it wasn't the Packers because I think they got drafted pretty early, but there was someone else. I can't. It doesn't matter. But anyways, that's the strategy for me. It's like just wait, watch that first week. Whatever defense looks stifling, just
I
pick them up,
agree.
see what happens.
I don't want this to happen, but like say for example, the Panthers defense shows up and looks great week one against the Bears offense. That's something to note.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't want to make any. Let's move on with the news because
And yeah, unfortunately, the rest of the news is mostly just injuries, and some of them are a little devastating, or at least devastating because there's an unknown piece to it. First of all, Jordan Tyson is officially out approximately 2 months with a hamstring strain. I think it was grade 2, maybe grade 3, but it's concerning because it's not just like an unknown thing, but they're like he's going to be out until October. That's known. So I think that them coming out the gate and saying that is concerning because obviously it would be concerning if he just had hamstring issues because he's struggled with those in college, but now that it's a definitive 2 months, he's going to start the season on IR. It's, I mean, he's going to fall in ADP, and I like that, but it definitely does shoot up Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, and I think even Travis Etienne for me. How do you feel about Tyler Shuck with the Tyson news?
I'm I it does throw like a little bit of cold water on Tyler Shuck, but not a lot. I'm still in on Tyler Shuck as far as his ability and him being the quarterback I like to jump way ahead of where he's being drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I think it removes a little bit of the top end, but not a lot, honestly. I mean, we're talking 4 weeks without Tyson, and really what I liked about Shuck was that he was capable and willing to run
Mm-hmm.
and capable of passing, and he looked like he knew the difference of when to do which. So he looked pretty poised already for a rookie. He was old, but he was still a rookie. And
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Chris Olave doesn't shoot up a ton for me because he's already pretty high. And
True.
for me, the thing that scares me the most with Olave is just and it's silly. I hate to bank on this, but the concussions are the ones that scare me the most. And he's had so many of them in such a short period of time that it feels like anyone could knock him out for 6 weeks at a time.
Easily, yeah. I agree. I do. I am raising my ceiling on Chris Olave because I was already lower on him to begin with. I do still like now where he's going at in ADP, at least relative to the pre Tyson injury news. If he does continue to move up, then I'm going to continue to be on him where I was.
Mm.
And I agree with Shuck. Like it does throw a little bit of cold water, but we already saw an ascent from Shuck later in the season last year, and he didn't have Tyson last year. So
Yeah. What really I think the the two main beneficiaries of this are going to be Juwan Johnson because Juwan
mm-hmm.
Johnson now goes back to his big role. He's the tall guy who can catch passes in the end zone, and that was what I was expecting Tyson to do. Um, and Juwan Johnson does it; he's pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Achan, and the reason for Achan isn't necessarily this news; it's the combination of this news with the fact that Kamara also got hurt. And
Yes.
Kamara, I think it was a strained MCL, so he might be back week 1, but maybe. And also with the running back his age who's been dealing with these injury issues, I don't expect it, honestly. I've already
Yeah.
said he doesn't really worry me from a productivity standpoint for Achan and the way he does to basically everyone else that I'm hearing. Everyone else is really worried about him. I'm not that worried about Kamara. And then if you're starting off with Kamara already hurt, I'm really not worried. The only time I'd be worried about Kamara is if they get close to the playoffs and they're almost in. Then I think he's going to turn on and he'll show up. But until then, he's just coasting and making a bunch of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that with the Tyson injury news and the Kamara injury news, that's probably like at least a few extra touchdowns in the first couple months going Achan's way. So, we'll see how the Kamara injury plays out, but I think that it the prognosis is likely heavily in favor of Achan's continue involvement in this offense and the decrease in Kamara.
Yeah, yeah. He's a great pass catcher too. So this just does wonderful things for him. We'll talk about him more later.
Kind of a double dose of bad news for the Cardinals. So first, their rookie starting offensive guard Chase Basantis, who was drafted early in the second round, is out for the season with a torn ACL. And Jeremiah Love, who looked awesome in that preseason game, he was very heavily involved as the starter. He is now dealing with a high ankle sprain, and he's expected to start week 1, but it's nothing confirmed. He's out at least a few weeks. So we're not going to see him anymore in preseason, which is fine. That's good. But high ankle sprains are brutal.
Yeah, and I don't love any rookie that's missing time right now. That's something that's going to bug me about any rookie that gets injured at this point. That includes Jordan Tyson. Is that they're going to take more time to acclimate into the offense because there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And missing this, because you can learn via books, but actually playing is a different thing. So when he comes back, I don't expect him to just walk into the main role. What I would hope for here is that Jeremiah drops a few rounds in value. People get
Mm-hmm.
scared and they drop him down to the 6th round. Because that usage, if that even comes ever close to it, even you're halfway through the season, mwah, like it's beautiful. I don't believe that they would use Jeremiah that much in a preseason game if they didn't also plan to use him a ton in the regular season. I just wanted to see what it looked like and if the offense could work on that. And I'll tell you, either the Raiders defense is the worst defense of all time, very possible. Don't let me confuse you. That's very possible. Or that Cardinals offense is going to be better than we guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that at the very least, I mean, with the Basantis news, the O line being hurt isn't great, but I think that Jeremiah Love and this run game has so much depth and so much talent that I do think this run game could be really, really good, at least in real life. Um, and I think that I don't see Love falling to the 6th round, but even a round or two, like, it starts to get me a little intrigued because I could see him taking it slow to start the year, and then like come December, the Cardinals aren't playing for anything, but Love will have felt, begin to feel fully comfortable in this offense, and he could have a great end of fantasy season. So that's something to look at. Um, and I think I don't know why I did this. I'm a sicko, but I was reading about Love on the Notre Dame football subreddit, and basically just like fans were agreeing that he's a beast, but he often was injured. He played injured throughout his entire career there. He was questionable for games, and then he would just go out and be a beast. And he continued to do that, and remains to be seen if that will carry over into the NFL level. But basically, like he is resilient, is what I got out of it.
Yeah, and if I were the Cardinals and I had Jeremiah Love and he's hurt, I would bench him for as long as I could. Because
Mm-hmm.
you also have Tyler Algier, you have Connor, who I think also might be hurt, but you got Trey Benson too. Then you got the four-headed running back group here as well. But the Cardinals, in smart ideas and decisions, really, really, really don't go hand in hand.
No.
So I'm not overly worried about their choice making. I think they'll just choose whatever gets people to actually buy tickets to their games still.
Yeah, which would be Jeremiah Love, but yeah, we'll see.
For sure, the third overall pick. Yeah, you gotta get that guy here.
Bears running back Kyle Monangai suffered a hyperextended knee. I guess he had a collision with veteran defensive tackle Grady Jarrett during a practice. It looked really bad at first. Apparently, the knee is just hyperextended, so he's sitting out the rest of preseason, but is expected to return week 1. So he definitely avoided a serious injury. I don't. I think relative to like a groin or a hamstring injury that was serious, I think a hyperextended knee is a little bit better. Um, but if anything were to happen with Monangai, and with one of the top free agent veteran running backs like Najee Harris off the market now, like if something were to happen and they don't have a great depth piece to sign, DeAndre Swift could be a league winner, regardless of where he's going right now.
Yeah. It makes DeAndre Swift more of a value pick for where he's at.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift becomes almost like if you need a running back, this is the guy who you're going to target, especially if you're going wide receiver heavy early.
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Swift's going to have a big old bullseye right in the middle of his head. So get ready. If you're drafting after this and you're planning on drafting wide receiver heavy, know that everybody who's doing the same is going to be looking at DeAndre Swift as that like cliff.
Yeah. He really is, and it's curious, like I think Monangai will be, healthy, but just imagine if he wasn't, and unless they traded for a running back, like this offense relies so heavily on the run game. Like I can't imagine a world where DeAndre Swift doesn't finish as an an RB1 top 12 running back just based on involvement alone.
This is where
Yeah,
Tyrone Tracy should go. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of running backs that should go here, but this has been the way for 2 seasons, and Ben Johnson doesn't seem to care much. So
It's true. Yeah, they didn't draft a running back this year, so we'll see.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just I think it was earlier today, maybe it was yesterday. Um, Second year receiver on Houston, Jaden Higgins tore his ACL. Really sucks. I Higgins had an underrated season last year. He had over 500 yards and 5 or 6 maybe touchdowns. So he kind of flew under the radar in terms of like who we talked about as solid rookies. Obviously, he had competition for targets with fellow rookie Jalen Noel, and now Tank Dell is back. But I think he was a really solid value pick, and now him being out, it's hard for me to get confidence in Tank Dell returning fully from injury. But he's somebody that I like. Maybe we see something from Jalen Noel, but I think regardless, this mostly unfortunately helps Nico Collins, and I think there's still enough depth on this team that we don't have to worry about Nico being triple covered like he was a couple years ago before Higgins and Noel arrived. So it could really prove Nico to be a dark horse, wide receiver one overall guy.
Yeah, he's someone who I've talked about liking. And it's funny, both quarterbacks who I said I liked that were more controversial were C.J. Stroud and Tyler Shuck, and they both lost major pass catchers. Whereas with Tyler Shuck, I wasn't as worried about this. Like, this, I don't love this for C.J. Stroud because we've seen what happens when his receivers go down, and Nico Collins isn't exactly the picture of health.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like a quarterback for fantasy, I think that kind of really hurts his. The stability there is almost gone. I would be super scared of even having like. There's no reason to have him as a QB2 even at this moment if you're on
No.
a single QB league. With that said, Jalen Noel, I think that he can start climbing up into the realm of sleeper because it's not that he looked bad last year. It's just that whole offense kind of looked bad, and if this offensive line does gel a little bit, then I could see one of these other wide receivers. Tank Dell could be the dude. I want him to be the dude. I'm with you though. I can't. I'm not gonna go ahead and say that that's what's gonna happen. I would rather bet on Jalen Noel.
Yeah, just because Noel is going so much later. I think even with the Higgins injury, he's probably still free. And yeah, like you said, like Noel didn't look bad last year. He just was buried on the depth chart because he was a rookie, and they had even Christian Kirk is gone. He was there last year. Nico Higgins, so he's somebody to watch at least. I'm out on CJ Stroud regardless of who's on this team, but uh, I think that this mostly gets me like even more in on Nico.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Fair.
Other than that, there was really no other big news. Chargers center Tyler Biotis tore his ACL, which really sucks. They do have a bevy of guards fighting for starting spots, though. So I think what likely happens is they take their rookie, um, possible left guard, Jake Slaughter, and make him center because he played center in college, but he was drafted as a guard. So my theory is that he probably starts at center this year. So it's not great, but they have a decent amount of depth.
If there's one thing that Mike McDaniel's knows how to work around,
Yeah, that's exactly, especially
Black
when it comes to the run game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then the other two, these are like more of the unknown hamstring and groin injuries. That being, Chuba Hubbard has a hamstring injury. The severity, the timeline, unknown. Brees
Mm.
Hall has a groin injury. timeline looks to be about 2 to 3 weeks. He's out the rest of preseason, but nothing to the level of like Jordan Tyson or anything like that.
Yeah, and Brees Hall. I mean, the worries would be the same as they are now. Like, I don't think he's
Yeah,
ever going to give up his full role to Braylon Allen. But he could give up a little bit of it, but that's already a big worry anyway. You know, and then Chuba is more interesting because if Jonathan Brooks comes out the gate and looks amazing, then Chuba may lose his job. So Chuba
yeah,
gets a lot more risk involved here because if he gives up that time, he's letting his rookie, not the rookie anymore, but the young guy show off behind him.
and we know Dave Canales, he does play the hot hand. We saw that last year with Chuba having a minor injury and then coming back healthy, but Rico Dottle still getting almost all the important carries because he was looking great for a few years for a few weeks there. Um, and yeah, I think that it's hard for me too because I think that Jonathan Brooks is going to look amazing week one because they're playing the Bears run defense. So maybe temper expectations there a little bit, but regardless, like Jonathan Brooks is probably going to be one of my starts week one. And I
Okay.
think with the Chuba injury, even if Chuba's healthy, like they're going to probably have Brooks be the starter as Chuba comes back.
All right, sick. There's so much news, and I don't even think that covers like actually all of it. There's so much right now. So, with that said, we're gonna get into the tier list here, and we're not gonna just read down the tiers because I don't think that's actually helpful for anyone. So, if you want to follow along a little bit and you're wondering where we're getting our numbers from, we take all of ours from Fantasy Pros, which are a mix of expert rankings, and we just go down their tier list, and we're gonna talk about kind of who we think are the values in each tier and who are the well, I don't want to call them unvaluable. That's not right. They're valuable. Okay. Anyway, here's my point. We talk about tier based drafting. We talked about a lot last year. We have a episode about draft strategies, and that wasn't just pertinent to that season. You can look at that any season and kind of find a strategy that works with you best or jives with you best. And if you don't know anything about strategies, it's a good place to kind of start getting ideas. Tier based drafting is what I love, and there's a reason why I love it. It's because it allows you flexibility. Tier-based drafting says here are the guys who I think should all go in this first tier and then the second tier, and you can see where the cutoffs are. You can see where you have to reach for positions, and when the player that you've decided you absolutely have to have, when you're like, I'm going to take DeAndre Swift in the fourth, and the guy right before you also thought the same thing and took him, you have a pivot ready for you somewhere because you've already defined the tiers and the players who are in each. And the tier list that you see on here, it's just like ADP. You don't have to follow it blindly. You can kind of change and make things your own. So, like, I'm going to talk about a lot of players who I would move up tiers, and I'll talk about some players who I would move down tiers during this. But we're going to kind of go through these and give me just a brief moment, if you will, because the first two tiers here are what I like to call the bell cow tiers. I don't know. Can you hear me, Willie?
I can, and it's terrifying.
Okay, so the bell cow tier is the first two tiers. This is where most people say you want to leave with a running back that buoys your team. So if you're going hero RB or robust RB, this is where you want to get them. Let's talk about tier one. Oh my God, this is a good bit, but it's kind of hard.
For our listeners on Spotify, Nick is wearing a terrifying cow mask, and I know all masks have eyes, and you don't blink in masks, but these eyes in particular are so creepy. Like the fact that the cow is not blinking stands out to me so much more than any other mask.
Well, one thing that I liked about this, and I put it on fast, so I didn't get it exactly right, but the mouth moves when I talk.
It does move. It does move.
Anyway, okay, so tier one has it's your Jamar Chases, Jahmyr Gibbs, your Bijan Robinsons, your top of the top. You're only getting these tier one players if you're in the first half of the first round in your draft. So, look, I'm gonna be real with you. The first tier, make your gut call. Think about who you like here. Take them because you're not gonna get opportunities. It doesn't matter if you're number one overall and you like the last guy in the tier. Take him. Doesn't matter. You're not gonna get him a chance again.
Yeah, there's 6 guys here, and all of them I could have a reasonable argument to take 101.
I was going to do that for a while. I couldn't keep doing it. I'm sorry.
Thanks, back. Yeah, all these guys I can see taking 101. Like just
Yeah.
for a quick example, like Amon Ross St. Brown, he's at the very end of tier one, and taking him 101, I don't really love, but I could see it because he's such a safe pick that
Mhm.
if you want to get risky later, round two, round three, round four, then this is your opportunity because you could possibly take one of the safest players in fantasy at the 101 in St. Brown.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue too much. There's one player in this tier that I would personally put in tier two, and
Who's that?
it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, and it's
Yeah,
not the player himself. The player himself, if everything had stayed the same as last year, he could easily make an argument for being the first drafted wide receiver. He smoked the field last year. He was awesome. Um, Too many things have changed
yeah,
for the Seahawks. I don't necessarily believe that what happened last year is going to be the exact same as what happens this year. I think without a lot of really clever playmaking, it's going to be a lot harder to get one guy open every single play, and that's what
yeah.
Jackson Smith and Jigba did last year. So JSN to me is tier two. That's the only player in this one that has any tier change for me.
I would agree. I think that I'd probably put JS. Yeah, actually, no. I take it back. There's a guy in tier two that I would swap with JSN, and I would feel more comfortable. But still, don't hate him in tier one.
Okay. Other than that, like I said, so tier one, Jamar Chase, Junior Gibbs, Puka, Bijan, Amon Ra, JSN. I'm out on Puka a little bit at this price, but that's neither here nor there, and I don't want to call it a tier downgrade. That's just tea leaf feeling. So that's not something I want to tell other people to do. So let's move on to tier two because this is where it starts to get interesting. Because now you're at the back half of round one, beginning of round two. You may be able to take two of these guys. And also, this is where you might start looking at tier three and being like, oh, I actually like those dudes more because tier three and tier two are a lot closer than tier one and tier two.
Yeah,
Let me just talk about my upgrades and I'll let you go through first. The one person who I would put in tier one out of this that I would swap with JSN is a player we talked about already in our top wide receivers, and that for me is Justin Jefferson. I'm okay with getting
me
back in
too.
on Justin Jefferson. Kyler Murray being the starting quarterback, I think everything changed in the right way that I need to see. And I really think that Justin Jefferson's that wide receiver that bounces back from a terrible season into an amazing season. For me, everything's there. I'm okay with saying he should be tier one. Like if I'm in this range and he's sitting there, I'm probably taking him.
Yeah, he was the guy for me that I would swap with JSN. Again, it's relatively close, but I think when we're talking about like who I would like in the first half of the first round versus who I would like in the second half, I would say I'd rather have Justin Jefferson in the first half and JSN in the second half, but they are close. This tier is small; it's only 5 players, but I think one guy stands out pretty egregiously to me, and that would be the top of tier two, CD Lamb. Again, and we talked about this. I'm not out on CD Lamb's potential this year, but when you compare him to, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, all those guys have maybe more banked in injury risk, or offensive. Their offense isn't as good as the Cowboys this year on paper. With CD Lamb though, like all those guys I mentioned, CMC, Drake London, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, these are the kind of guys that I see the volume being there, the touchdown numbers, the volume, the receptions just being there. Like if they're healthy, it will be there. There is such a safe floor. CD Lamb has not proven to be a touchdown guy the past couple of
Mm-hmm.
seasons. Again, he was injured last year, but I think that his teammate George Pickens is sitting down in the middle of tier three, when in reality I would just put CD Lamb slightly above Pickens in terms of favoritism, but I would not put either of them in tier two. I think CD is one of the riskiest, lowest floor first round picks you could make this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I didn't mark him as anything, but I can fully follow that argument you're making. I actually don't have any markings for anyone in tier two, otherwise that need to be moved down. Um,
I don't either. I mean, like CMC, like I'm risk adverse on him, but like he totally fully deserves to be in this tier. Same with Jonathan Taylor. This is a little high for Drake London, but his upside is there, and his reception floor is so high, even with Tua starting, that I think he earns a spot here too.
yeah, one of my favorite things about CMC is that if you are in on him, this is too low. And if you're out on him, you're never going to take him here anyway. So it's a funny spot. It's like you're either getting a discount or it's a player you don't have to care about here.
Yeah,
Uh, and it'll work one way or the other. Trust me. Like it'll either be great or awful. There's no in between here. Tier three. I apparently love tier 3 a lot because there's a bunch of players who I would say I consider part of tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
For me, running back Ashton Genty of the Las Vegas Raiders, we talked about him. I think he has all the potential in the world to just decimate where he's being taken. I think he could be running back 1, 2, 3 overall if things go right for him. And I don't think his floor is that low if things don't go right. I really, just seeing what I saw, and this is the one Raiders preseason game, so take it with a grain of salt. But that offense looks so much more competent. They ran plays that look like NFL offenses. They were moving people around, and that's a Clint Kubiak thing. That's been a multiple year Clint Kubiak thing. He knows how to make offenses work,
Mm-hmm.
and you want a running back in an offense that works. They're going to have multiple shots at the end zone. And Ashton Genty had a bad season last year for where he was drafted. An okay season in the NFL, but I'm sure that he's upset that it didn't go as well as he thought it would. I think he's going to be phenomenal. James Cook, I'm willing to put up into tier 2. Not a lot to say about it. It's just why would we expect him to be worse than he was last year? He shouldn't be in tier 3. He should be tier 2.
Yeah, it's just like I get Jonathan Taylor had the higher ceiling games and had those 3 touchdown games, but I think the if you take everything into account, like I like James Cook more than Jonathan Taylor, or at the very least, I think that they're obviously different players, but I think their floor, or rather their ceiling, and their potential to finish higher. I just basically, long story short, I see them as being very even, and Jonathan Taylor being up in tier 2 and James Cook being a few spots lower. I feel like it doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, that's fair. The other two players I have are it's positional, right? So I have both Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. I'm okay with moving them up to tier 2. Mostly for the same reason I said about CMC. If you're interested in taking an early tight end, you're going to need to take him earlier than what it's showing here in tier 3. And if you're not, then you don't have to worry about these players. So you might as well move them up to tier 2 as well, because for me it just makes more sense. If you're going to take it, it's at the you're going to miss out on all these other guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I'm much higher on Brock Bowers. I think the gap between him and McBride is higher this year than it was last year. For me, at least, I think that Bowers just will benefit from I think a better offense from the Cardinals, and I do think that Love injury or high ankle sprain notwithstanding, I think that the Cardinals really do want to be that run first team, and I do like McBride a lot, but he's more of like a tier. I mean tier. Yeah, I mean tier 3. He's low to tier 3. I think he's comfortable from here too. I just wouldn't move him up. I wouldn't move him up. Move him up.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's only one guy I'd move down, but first, before I do that, Willie, take me through the people you'd move up from tier 3.
I think we hit on him. I think Genty and James Cook, at the very least, like they should be in the same range as Jonathan Taylor and CMC, for different reasons. But I think that they're all like around the same range for me in terms of like likelihood of outcomes and where I would take them. The only guy for me here isn't really a knock on him per se, and I think he might have ascended a little bit here because of a Jordan Tyson news, but Chris Olave being in tier 3 is like, I get it. He's maybe not for me, but I understand it. But there's at least 2 or 3 other players, 2 other receivers, and a couple other players that are in tier 4 that should clearly be higher for me. Tier 4 is my favorite tier, and the fact that Chris Olave is going a whole tier ahead of them is does not make any sense. So I would definitely take Chris Olave out of this tier and Devon Achan out of this tier to make room for these other guys.
Yeah, see, it's funny. I've gone so back and forth with Devon Achan. I was really out on him, and I still kind of am for that offense. However, I do think there was a particular stat on it was the amount of success he had against completely stacked boxes, where it wasn't even the scheme. It was just him being able to get past a stacked box and then score a
Mm.
touchdown on it. And anyway, wild stuff. And it's okay, maybe I'm wrong about this guy. Maybe this is where he thrives. Maybe this is what works. But anyway, I'm leaving him in tier 3 because he's such a clear risk. Because he could really bottom out your team. He scares me a lot too.
I do see the vision with him though, especially because like again, this Dolphins offense isn't going to be great probably, but like he just is so involved, and I know McDaniel's is gone, but like Achan is still so talented, and in the preseason game, take those with a grain of salt. Like he played all of the starter snaps at running back. He was used targeted by Willis as a receiver. He was taking the carries on every drive. So like with the starters, so there's definitely a workhorse role for them here. I guess the only reason I would take him out is because there's two running backs in tier four that I think should be a lot higher that are not.
Yeah, there's some interesting one. The only player in tier three that I'm really willing to downgrade is Rashee Rice, and that is just because of his role and his play at this point. Like, and it's not just the preseason game. I don't even know if he played in the preseason game. It's just everything we're seeing around Rice is very negative right now as far as his his ability to play right now. It's not necessarily that like his role has changed, but he seems like he's not been taking it very seriously during the offseason. He went to jail. So,
Yeah,
I think there's like there's a little bit there. Like he could just have a slow start for not being in it. And if he has a slow start, then I don't want to draft him, in the first two rounds. That's not really what I want.
yeah, he's definitely one of the riskier ones. And if you like compare him to even somebody like Olave, who I'm higher on, like Olave, concussion risk notwithstanding, like he is clearly going to be a focal point of his offense. And Rice very well could be, and I think he will, but like there's less volatility with Olave, where Olave is going to be wide receiver one. It's going to funnel through him. Rice, we don't know how like committed he is to it, and if it's going to repeat. I think it will, but riskier
Yeah. Okay, let's move into tier four. This is Willie's favorite tier.
easily.
He said it. So I'll just talk about the two that there's an overlap here. I know there is. The two that we're going to talk about that should move up, and it is Saquon Barkley, it is Omari and Hampton for me. I look, you lose your center, I get that's bad news, but like it's Mike McDaniels. I don't care. Omari and Hampton deserves to be in tier three. I would almost argue for tier two. I'm willing to jump him 2 tiers ahead with Genty, but like, okay, tier three at the very least. Like, what are we doing? How could Omari and Hampton move this low? What happened?
I don't know. I think that I really don't have an answer because him and Genty were both drafted high. Again, Genty was a top six pick, but they're both on paper like they both had huge offensive coordinator upgrades. They both have O line upgrades, even with the injury with Hampton in the Chargers. They, I feel like they should be moving in a linear fashion, and I get that Genty's still in a high end of tier three, and that's close to tier two. But I think Hampton should be very closely behind him, even though I do like Genty more. I think that there's such a wide gap between them, just doesn't make sense to me. Um, and with Saquon Barkley, like I've already talked about this enough, but when I mentioned the James Cook and Jonathan Taylor should be around the same range or a lot closer. Barkley should be right up there with him, and I'm higher on Barkley than either of them. Might seem crazy, but I'm all in on Saquon Barkley this year, and him being down in tier four just makes no sense because this team lost AJ Brown. Their offense is upgraded. Barkley showed he's an incredible player 2 seasons ago. He had an even better season 2 seasons ago than Taylor had last year, and there's so much recency bias baked into Taylor and why he's going so much higher. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm so in on Barkley. Tier four, like if he's actually if your league actually drafts him as at the 2-3 turn, if he falls that far, I would take him in the first round. So if you can get him in the second round, not even the late second round, but if you're picking seventh and he's in the second round, that's a great pick to me. But if his ADP is actually the 2-3 turn, that's absurd, and I love that value.
Yeah, I think this might be overreaction to the arguments that have happened earlier. Those are the two players I have clearly moving up. I think you could also make an argument for Malik Neighbors. He's one that is like in this question mark range to me because if he continues to be healthy and look like himself and going into the season, there's really no doubts about his role.
Mm-hmm.
He should easily be tier three. I can. The only reason I think he's in tier four is this question mark, right? Like if you're drafting now, go ahead and I'd say go ahead and take that value, get him, and is in tier four. But right now, if we find out he's healthy, he'll probably be maybe even tier two.
Yeah, I mean, he's a player for me. Like he, at the very least, and again, they are close, but he should at the very least be in the same tier as Rasheed Rice. Like I know in our initial rankings a few weeks ago, I had Rice higher, but that was before his continuation of off the field stuff and the Neighbors fully practicing. So I am a little bit higher on Neighbors probably than Rice, but they're both risky, and I think they both should be around the same range.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any other upgrades you want to talk about?
Um, I can understand Devonta Smith being tier four. He's at the very top, but I like him in tier three. But again, it's relative. Like he's still going, so at the top of tier four, it's the very beginning of the third round, and I could see taking him around that range. I probably wouldn't go much higher on him, but the upside is there for me. Um, so actually, I do like him there. The other guy is just Lad McConkey at the very bottom of tier four. According to ADP going at the end of the third round, I would take Lad McConkey in the second in a heartbeat. And I know that's high, but if he just continues to improve, his Mike McDaniel, and there's no Keenan Allen, I am super high in McConkey this year. And I think if you look at him compared to everyone else in tier four, he's at the bottom of tier four on Fantasy Pros. Besides Saquon and Hampton, I think I would take him over every other player in this tier. So I think at the very least, he's just a great value, and I do appreciate that he's at least included in tier four. Even though I might like him in tier three, I like that he's included here because he deserves to be here.
No, that's interesting though. I would take Neighbors also. I think above him, but Smith, McConkey and Smith are next for me. Like, and you could choose whatever version of that you're feeling that day. You know, I like McConkey, but if I went Hampton, which I would love to do, I don't know
Yeah,
that I want to double down on Chargers that early.
that's I have Hampton in a keeper league in the second, at the very end of the second this year, and I would love to take McConkey at the 301, but it's a bit rich.
Yeah, you don't know if like what happens if the problem isn't them. It's that if like something happens to Justin Herbert, all of a sudden, wow, that
You
offense
lost
is
two
different.
players. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, downgrades from tier four. I think I'm just feeling a little mean on a certain team at some point
me too.
because I'm out on both Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson in tier four. I'm saying
Yeah,
this is too rich for my blood. I left Josh Allen tier four. I'm okay with that. Lamar,
mm,
I'm not okay with drafting this early. I say get him out of tier four, put him down to tier five. Okay, and then Zay Flowers is tier six, especially if he's dealing with some weird injury too. Like get him out of here for a little bit. Like this is way too rich for my blood. I know he had a pretty good finish last year, but I also know that it wasn't a very consistent or very impactful fantasy season, regardless. Like Zay Flowers, I just you follow the money and you get it. You get here. You follow the end of the
yeah.
season stats, you get here. But if you follow consistency throughout a season, you don't get here. I don't think Zay Flowers is a safe choice this early.
I don't either. I would say, Zay Flowers in tier five, which is like around the 4 or 5 turn. I could get behind that because I could see him finishing there, and I get people getting excited about potentially having a more of a pass first offense this year. But really, based on what, besides the Ravens, O line maybe being worse than last year and Derrick Henry getting older, like people are high on Declan Doyle, and I should be as a Bears fan because he was the Bears offensive coordinator. But he did not call plays. It was Ben Johnson. He has not proven himself whatsoever. He's barely older than I am. he people have too much faith in this Ravens offense because of him, and it makes no sense to me. And I'm higher on the Ravens than you this year, but only because of Jesse Minter's influence and the defense. I really do like the Ravens' potential on defense this year, but the offense I'm fading. And Lamar Jackson, I know he's been historically great, but I would even put him in tier six because I think there's other guys going after him in tier six quarterbacks that are more akin to where I see him this year, which is a questionable offense, injury risk, and not having a lot of elite skill position players. So I'm definitely low on Lamar Jackson, and yeah, I don't think he should be here.
Yeah, I don't know. Either he's going to be QB one or he's not going to return on this value. There's no in
Yeah,
between, and I don't bet on QB one in this year. The
no.
pieces don't add up to me. Other than that, everyone felt pretty okay. Um, all right, would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Tedero McMillan?
Um, I mean, it's probably I don't know. I mean, I think in my rankings I put McMillan, but he was 2 spots ahead of Wilson. Um, it's really a coin flip for me. I think McMillan's probably has a bigger threat in terms of targets. Well, okay, that's not true. Wilson has more of a threat of targets because there's more mouths to feed on the Jets, but I think Coker is a bigger threat to McMillan's touchdown volume than Sadiq or Omar Cooper or Adonai Mitchell are to Garrett Wilson, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just doing the Geno Smith tax at this point too. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, Geno Smith, like Garrett Wilson, I think is more or less QB proof. I wouldn't be shocked if Garrett Wilson finishes as a top 10 receiver this year, but I think that him and McMillan are pretty equal for me.
Yeah, I asked that question about those two because those two were the names that like just felt so uninspiring when I'm looking at them in tier 4. I'm like, oh gosh, you have to choose one of those guys, and it almost made me want to remove them down, but I didn't, because I think they do belong there.
And well, there's also, I mean, there's maybe one or two. There's one guy that's around the same range for me, but there's no like receivers in tier 5 for me that I'm like, oh, they're so much better than Garrett Wilson and McMillan. Why are they not at the same range as
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. We'll talk about tier 5. Um, my upgrade, I only have one, and it's based on injury, and it is Jeremiah Love. If he ends up being fine, and they're like, oh, it wasn't really as bad as we thought it was, he's gonna play preseason week 1, or he's gonna play regular season week 1. He's gonna get his regular role. He probably deserves to be higher, just based on now from what I'm seeing, the volume they're gonna give him. But that's a big what if. As it stands, it's so injury reliant and news reliant that I'm not saying that he necessarily should move up. That's just the one that screams to me like I would like to take him at value at this range.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think the other guy you can make a really strong argument for is T. Higgins. This feels kind of low for him. He's a player that I don't really necessarily want to draft, but at this point, he has probably the highest ceiling. And I'm gonna do a downgrade in a second here that's gonna really upset you, and I know it will. But go ahead, tell me your upgrades from tier 5.
Yeah, I think with Jeremiah Love, like I'm still not in on him here. I think that talk about next week and the week after that. I think he'll continue to fall probably to tier 6, and I like him there. In tier 5 here though, he's still RB 13, which is too rich for me. I'm not in on that. Um, for upgrades, yeah, and with T Higgins, like him going, I think he should be going around the range of Wilson and McMillan in that tier because at least on a per game basis, he has a much higher ceiling than those guys. Like not much higher, but like we've seen that ceiling be higher. For me though, I think Travis Achan, RB 18 at the very bottom of his tier, I would comfortably move him up to tier 4. Even before the Tyson and Kamara injury news, I was still on him in tier 4, and I think that if you can get him like pick 48, what is that, the very end of the 4th round? Like no, I take Achan in the 3rd round comfortably.
Yeah, I misspoke. This is my second page. I didn't look at my second page here. You're right. There's Travis Achan, and then there's also Javonte Williams for me as well. I think both those guys could make clear arguments to be drafted much higher than they're being drafted right now.
Yeah, and the very end here is also your guy DJ Moore.
Yes, yes. And DJ Moore, we'll talk a lot more about him. He got hurt, but it doesn't look to be that bad. I think he's already back in practice, but it's questionable. DJ Moore plays hurt a lot too.
Yeah, he doesn't miss games. He's like the Josh Allen. Ironically, he's like the Josh Allen of receivers because I don't think he's missed a game in like 5 years.
And I'm finally seeing people come around to my way of thinking with him because that first preseason game showed exactly what I was talking about. Within like one drive, he had 3 catches for 61 yards right off the bat. Like he immediately got 3 targets, 3 catches, 61 yards. I'm just saying, like, we're missing the plot here if you don't think that the wide receiver one for Josh Allen that can actually do that is an actual wide receiver quality, or is a quality wide receiver in the NFL that could be a wide receiver one isn't going to blow up. I just don't get it.
It's the recency bias again. I think that obviously, here's the thing as a Bears fan is that DJ Moore was actually really good last year. He just wasn't great in fantasy because there was so many other pieces around him, and he was able to play wide receiver 3 in terms of targets towards the end of the year. 4th in targets at the end of the year with Loveland, and that's all they needed him for because again he wasn't part of the Bears regime when Ben Johnson came in, or wherever he was, but Ben Johnson didn't bring him in. The Bills traded a 2nd-round pick for this 31-year-old receiver. That means they want him as part of their offense. He's going to be the alpha there, and we just haven't seen it in a few years. But just because we haven't seen it since Diggs was there doesn't mean it's never going to happen again.
Seriously, I just don't get it. I'm so confused. I'm like, yeah, they found the path to the easiest star wide receiver they could get, and people don't think DJ Moore is a star. I don't care what people think. I care that Joe Brady thinks he's a star.
Yeah, I saw an argument as like, well, they tried this before. They brought in Amari Cooper and it didn't work.
In what world? Thing.
Yeah, no.
Amari Cooper was a hot and cold player, anyways. DJ
Yeah,
Moore is a hot player as long as he has a quarterback throwing him the ball, and he hasn't. Like last season, you could easily argue he had a quarterback who could throw the ball, but they weren't throwing him the ball because that's not the way that offense worked.
exactly. That's all it was. It wasn't. He didn't miss games last year. He wasn't bad. You know, he had that one egregious lack of effort on that route in the Rams game, but he also had that best catch of the entire season against the Packers. Like he is an end zone threat. He is a target hog when he needs to be, and yeah, he could be
Here, I'll
great this
say
year.
I'll say something incendiary here that has no basis in reality. Okay, but this is the way I feel. I feel like everyone who's really out on DJ Moore are the people who only do best ball drafts before the season starts is like a roulette for the end of the season, and they don't watch football at all. They just look at
Yeah,
the stats and they're like, "I bet you I can put together a team." That guy sucked last year. Why is he up here? And they didn't watch and they don't understand it because otherwise, I just don't get this placement. He should be higher than.
yeah,
I love it though. Don't get me wrong. Stay there because I'm reaching in round early for DJ Moore. It's easy for me.
yeah.
Um,
Me too. I think that he's very safe floor, very high ceiling. Um, I think, and it's funny that like him and HN are towards the very bottom of his tier because they're two of the guys that we're highest on.
mhm.
I think in terms of moving people up, though, Homer takes like both Burden and especially Loveland are staring at me, and the Homer Bears fan in me like seeing Colston Loveland at the top of tier 5, tight end 3. I think that it's hard to prognosticate, and a lot of it is faith. But I think there's a very real chance that he's better than Trey McBride this year. He's going to be on a better offense. They're both offenses that have really solid run games and other great pass catchers around them. But I think that both Cardinals and Bears, their tight ends could be their top yards and touchdowns and receptions leader. And I have more faith in the Bears offense than the Cardinals. So I think personally, I'll probably take Colston Loveland higher than tier 5. I'd move him up into tier 4. But it's a little bit riskier than the safety of McBride because we haven't seen it from Loveland yet.
And, and this is where, yeah, this is what I was going to say. I was going to upset you with is that I'm moving Colston Loveland down a tier, and it's not a lack of faith in his ability. It has nothing to do with that. It's just that he's siloed as this tight end in tier 5, where there's not even
Silent.
like any real like the tier 6 is gigantic, right? And even there, looking through tier 6, who are the tight ends here? He's just like completely on an island, tight end wise. The value here is kind of weird to me. It has almost nothing to do with his play. It's like if I'm looking at it as like a game where you're playing with the other league makes the draft in this particular case. I don't like him here because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like he could slide. Mind you,
Yeah.
that could be a mistake, and I'm okay with admitting that. Like this is the downgrade where I'm like I'm pretty trepidatious on this. This has nothing to do with the player, or it is all to do with the positionality of this guy and where he's sitting.
I do get that logic. It is a weird spot to have him because we clearly, like on this list, we have Trey McBride and Brock Bowers in tier 2, and then a whole tier with no tight ends, and then another, or they're in tier 3, and then we have a whole tier of no tight ends, and then we have Loveland, and then we have another tier with the other year 2 younger guys, and Loveland is like really in the middle on this island. I think that his reasoning for being there is both a combination of what we saw down the stretch last year, sure, and then also I think that the Bears offense being much higher upside than like Tyler Warren on the Colts and Tucker Kraft on the Packers. But again, it is a lot of prognosticating because we haven't seen that tight end one season from Loveland yet. He's still young.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess I just don't like the value here because if he does well, but he doesn't smash at the
Yeah,
position, and he ends up closer to like your fan and Warren than we hope, then you're losing a lot of value by taking him there. And I would
yeah, because
love to move him down a tier and then get him like around later than where he's going right now. And it's a value thing. Like
well,
I hate it. I
especially
don't really
because
love it.
yeah, because I'd rather have Travis Etienne or DJ Moore than Loveland here because of the value and saving that tight end for a round or two later
Mhm.
would make more sense.
I'm downgrading Josh Jacobs because of the curiosity of his situation, mixed with I don't know the run game in Green Bay. I don't have nearly as much faith in it this year as I did last year, and last year didn't exactly look amazing.
Yeah,
So I am worried about it. I just don't think Josh Jacobs can keep being the only guy there in a reliable manner that actually makes sense.
Yeah, especially for this value. And I'm also going to downgrade. We'll just take Joe Burrow out of here. Like, no, this is take him out of here. Um, I think I'm torn on Kyron Williams because I think this may be the year that they talked about it being a split with Blake Corum the past couple of years, and it hasn't quite been that. I think that this is the year that we see Williams' usage regress, but I do think the Rams are going to be such a high scoring offense that even if Williams isn't great on a week to week basis, he's still going to return value to warrant being in tier 5. Like, he's still going to have huge weeks. So I can respect that.
Yeah, he's a hard one. I think for me, it's like he's a at RB15. He feels like this safe bet that could have a bottom falling out moment, but I
Mm-hmm.
still think he would get touchdowns. So he's not going to be completely lost.
It's the same
And
logic for me and Derrick Henry then too.
yeah, Terry McLaurin's the other one I'm downgrading, and that is a general worry with the Commanders' offense, just completely. I
Yeah.
think I need to see Jaden Daniels play up to the same level as his rookie year at least once before I'm really in on Terry McLaurin at this range, and we haven't, and it just scares me. It's RG3 PTSD is just too much of
Yeah.
it.
I don't hate McLaurin here, but I do think that the Diggs signing affects his volume ceiling. I think that volume ceiling is gone. The Laramie Tunsil injury, Jaden Daniels unknown injury health. Um, the one season he was great with Daniels, he had so many touchdowns. Um, it's like, yeah, I was higher on him a few weeks ago, for sure.
They were special touchdown catches too. Like this, don't get me wrong, Terry's skill went into it, but you can't replicate that just because of talent. That's not how that works.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's move into tier 6. So tier 6 has a whole lot of names that I. Okay, I'll just talk about my upgrades. I'll run through them real quick. Cam Scadaboo is an upgrade for me because I like his potential overall.
Mhm.
I think if I'm chasing upside, he's someone who I could see going around earlier than where he is here, just for that touchdown potential. Now he has the injury scares. He's a bonehead in New York. He's apparently doing really stupid things. Um, with Najee, that is. So there, I understand why he's here, but he's
Yeah,
someone I like to move up. And then DeAndre Swift, we talked about him. Like, come on, guys, duh. He's gonna get taken around earlier. I guarantee you, especially if Monongai is missing time. Just get ready for it. Don't expect him here.
yeah. I agree. I think that, like, at the very least, like, I'm still probably higher than somebody like Josh Jacobs, but having said that, like, I think DeAndre Swift is going to have better weeks than Jacobs. Jacobs is going to be this more, if he's on the field, he's going to be this more consistent week by week basis guy. But Swift has just a lot higher upside, and when you kind of level it out, I think they should be in the same tier.
Mm-hmm. My final one to move up here is Jalen Hurts. I like him more than the QBs in front of him. So this is me moving Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts and swapping places with them.
Nick, you and I are so similar. It's so funny. Like, we don't often talk about our favorites going into these videos, and obviously we have an understanding of our favorites. But like you and I we have such similar views on fantasy. There's very little room for contention, which I love. But we don't. We just agree so much. I was actually just thinking, like, yeah, swap Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, and that would make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, I was just also going to say, move Swift up and move Scatabo up.
Yeah. Okay.
That's and all that to say, I don't have anyone else I'm moving up in this tier except for maybe David Montgomery. Um, if we're going to be bullish on the O line being better, other than that, like, there's a lot of downgrades here and not a lot of upgrades.
David Montgomery is someone who I envision myself drafting a lot of this year because I
Yeah,
think people are worried about him. I can understand the worry enough that I'm not moving him up, but like, yeah, I agree. He's gonna end up on my teams because I think I'm in.
yeah.
I've been pretty clear about my feelings on the Texans. I suppose I'm in, but like I can get why he's here too. I understand.
Um, I got a couple big downgrades here for me,
Sure.
and they're players that the fantasy community are either currently, like, really in love with or have loved a lot in the past, and I just disagree. The first one for me is somebody whose hype I think is getting absolutely out of control. Just stop. Parker Washington on the Jags. Best case scenario, this is one of the best offenses in the league last year, this year, and there's multiple players eating and having wide receiver 1 weeks. Parker Washington had a great end of season last year, and I get being skeptical about Brian Thomas Jr., but in what world? You just swap those 2 seasons. Swap those 2 seasons. Parker Washington was a first round draft pick who, had the season he did 2 years ago, and then had, I don't know where I'm going at this, but basically, like, if Brian Thomas Jr. had the season he did last year, and Parker Washington did not have a season he did last year, he had the season he had 2 years ago, no one would be talking about Parker Washington. Again, he's looked great in camp. He had a great end of season. This is not just a team that has these 2 players, though. They also have Jacoby Myers, who's a touchdown hog. They have Bashal Tootin and Chris Rodriguez, Trevor Lawrence getting carries at the goal line. They have Brenton Strange, who people forget about at the tight end position. They have Travis Hunter sometimes on drives. Like, I don't see a path to any receiver on this Jags team being a clear, bona fide wide receiver 1. It's going to be, at best, a high end committee. And Parker Washington going so much higher than Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr. when I don't even think he's the best receiver on this team is so stupid to me. What are we doing? Why? What's going on?
I don't. It's interesting to me because I had Parker Washington last year. He's someone who helped me out a lot in the wide receiver position, and even watching those games, I just fail to see the like high end upside with Parker Washington. He reminds me of like Jamison Crowder when he was with the at that time named Redskins.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think that's a good example because Crowder's also a guy that was like around the league for a while and was solid, but never like exploded into this top tier wide receiver 1.
And I get Parker. So I think a lot of the narrative around Parker Washington is that he's like a high work ethic sort of dude. He's becoming best friends with Trevor, and I could see him turning up pretty well. But yeah, I think that there's a certain feeling of safety you get from taking Parker Washington here. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
Again, players always break out, but he was a 6th round draft pick 3 years ago. 6th round. First 2 seasons in the NFL, what did he do? He had a few hundred yards each year. Okay, year 1 he barely even played. He had 100 yards year 1, 300 yards year 2, and then last year he had 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. Solid, they're very good, but that's not wide receiver 1 numbers, and it's not like they lost Brian Thomas Jr. and Jacoby. What? Stop.
Well, you can't have it both ways, right? Like Liam Cohen and folks, either Brian Thomas Jr.'s wrist injury was a serious thing that actually happened, or it wasn't, right? And if it wasn't, then Brian Thomas Jr. sucks now. Okay. That still leaves Jacoby Myers and Travis Hunter there. They're all kind of like cannibalizing each other. I was really bullish on Jacoby Myers until I realized, oh my God, there's just too many people that are playing the exact same role. They're all super consistent catch everything dudes, except for Brian Thomas. But he had a wrist injury last year, so if he comes back and the wrist injury doesn't matter as much, do we really think him and Trevor Lawrence just aren't good friends? Is this really the? What are we doing?
I can't. And I think Parker Washington could have some really solid flex weeks, but they're like, I think at least half the receivers in the tier below him, I'm even on with Washington. Like he's going like 2 rounds ahead of somebody like, I don't know, like Wandale Robinson. Again, similar players to me. Like I don't see a difference there between them.
And he had a much better season on a much worse team.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just also I don't believe that Travis Hunter is going to be uninvolved in the offense. They can tell me that all they want. They didn't trade up and spend a second overall on just a cornerback. I guarantee they didn't.
No.
He's going to be involved as a wide receiver, and I don't care what packages he has. It's going to hurt the rest of them because it's going to be something that with high levels of productivity and efficiency when he's in there. I can almost guarantee it.
And also the Jaguars did take again, they are blocking tight ends, but they took at least 2, maybe 3 tight ends in the draft this year. And with the league gradually shifting towards more 2 tight end sets, that's going to open up or rather close the door and make more 2 wide receiver sets. And I have no faith that Parker Washington is going to be involved in every single 2 wide receiver set. That's just not going to happen.
No. My round 6 downgrades, and I'll just pop through me, and you can interrupt me if you want to talk about any of them specifically. But Jameson Williams, I'm not quite in on him at wide receiver 27. I get the upside, but I'm also worried that offense is going to be just a little bit worse. Drew Petzing doesn't give me that much hope for the wide receiver 2 on the team. Jaden Daniels, I just talked about it with Terry McLaurin. It's the same thing. I need to see it before I buy it.
Yeah.
Quinshon Judkins. This one, I understand why he's here, but I also think that the devastating injury from last year notwithstanding, this team is going to be bad again. And I don't think that he had the ability to get past the loaded box that he needed to. Because when I was watching him play last year, it wasn't that he was a bad player. It's that one, they moved away from him when they had, when they lost the lead. Makes sense because he wasn't very good at pass catching. And two, when that box was stacked, he couldn't run through everybody. And
Yeah.
I don't think, good on them for drafting Boston and Concepcion. I think with their quarterback situation, it doesn't make the boxes a lot better. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
It just looked
And
really bad still.
I think he could have some good games, and I just do think that he's not much of a pass catcher, and in PPR, like Dylan Sampson could really be that pass catching back that eats into Judkins' volume, and Sampson is just going so much later.
Mm-hmm. I'm also out at this range on Travion Henderson and Justin Herbert right now. Um, I think I hate quarterbacks except for Jalen Hurts is what's really happening here. Travion Henderson, I just don't believe that the Pats are moving away from a 50-50 split. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it at all. And they're like, I'd take Bashal Tootin right next to him. I'd take almost every running back that we didn't talk about in this round, even Bucky Irving before I would take Travion right now. So he's moving down and around for me. And then Justin Herbert, he's the player who I do think could get hurt by losing their starting center,
Mm-hmm.
because he gets sacked a ton. And I think he'll still be really productive, but I could see this just working more for the running game based on what I've seen out of Mike McDaniels in the past.
Yeah, I think Herbert here. Like, if we're gonna have Jaden Daniels here, I think Herbert and Daniels, Caleb Williams. Like, I think I'm higher on Daniels and Williams than Herbert, but like, I don't hate Herbert here. I think he could really return value. He could have a great season. For me, Travion Henderson is similar logic. Like, I think that it's going to be a split, and not the prettiest split. It's not going to be like a Rams split where like Williams and Corum could both have great weeks. I think it's going to be a little bit less exciting for Henderson. I'm also out on Bucky Irving here. I do love Bucky Irving as a player. I mean, he went to my mom's high school in Illinois, and he went to my college in Eugene. So I do love him a lot. Maybe this is a hot take, and I don't know, but I think Kenneth Gainwell is probably going to be the lead RB1 on the Bucks for at least part of this year. I think the Bucky injury news. I think the fact that they paid Gainwell a lot of money. I think the Bucks offense could also just regress in general. I think the Bucky that we knew 2 years ago, I hope he returns, but I don't have faith that it's going to. And yeah, I'd rather have other guys ahead of Bucky Irving. I don't think he should be in tier 6.
Yeah, my only, and this works for Kenneth Gainwell as well as it does for Bucky Irving. My argument is that if Ibuka and McMillan are both hurt, and that's real, and they stay hurt for a period of time, those running backs are going to catch some passes. And there's going to be a bunch to go around for him, and that's where I can see a lot of his value coming from because he was so good at it 2 years ago. Last year, you can pretty much throw it away. I think you have to hope that that's true though, because he was a 7th round running back. I mean, I think 7th. He's
He
drafted
was,
late.
he was fourth, I think, a fourth round.
Fourth.
But yeah, he was not drafted to be a starter, and he just became one.
He was one of my anyway. No, I'll stay away from that story. Let's move to tier 7. Tier 7. I've got some upgrades. I'm willing to take Jadarian Price above tier 7. I think he belongs to those tier 6 running backs. Tucker Kraft is the tight end I would move up here. You can make an argument for Harold Fanning going around him, but I think Tucker Kraft's one that him and Loveland should be closer. And I think that's really what I did is I moved Loveland down. I wanted to move Tucker Kraft up and say, like, you guys should be in the same tier. Just put you together. And go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think Loveland has more upside, but Tucker is safer in that kind of, maybe not safer is the right, but they should be closer. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And then Chris Godwin, Wandale Robinson, and Michael Wilson. I'm willing to take all those guys 6th tier.
Yeah, I mean,
no huge arguments for any of them except for I think they're better than what I'm seeing in this tier by quite a bit.
yeah, I think the first running back or first quarterback I would consider moving up, at least to be closer to the other guys, is Trevor Lawrence. I talked about the frustration with having such a three-headed monster plus at receiver. It's frustrating for individual players, but I mean, Trevor Lawrence, like he's got a great receiving core, best of his career, and he's just building off of what we already saw at the end of last year because all the guys are returning. So T-Law, I think, should be getting some respect and should be higher, relative to the other QBs. Um, Apart from that, I do agree with Tucker Kraft. I would also consider throwing Sam Laporta in there as well, but he's a little bit riskier. But I like him in there. Um, it's hard for me to pick one, but I think between DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman, one of these guys could be really, really great next year. I'd lean Pittman, but it's risky. But I'd still take him probably over Parker Washington around the same range at least, not 2 rounds later.
It's funny.
Um,
This is like the tier where you start seeing the twos, where you're like, "Oh, this is murky." They're both showing up now,
yeah,
and
Jalen
yeah,
Warren, Rico Dottle. Yeah,
I think I did the fun thing where I downgraded DK Metcalf and let make Michael Pittman. So I planted my flag there.
yeah,
Oh,
that's fair.
I also moved up Jackson Dart and RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey is like a gut call because J.K. Dobbins already got hurt. I think RJ Harvey could have, like whatever. He might not be the best running back in the world. He doesn't really need to be. I think that offense is going to click well enough to give him enough scoring opportunity.
I agree too. I think that he's also that like pass catching back that Sean Payton likes, and I know Jonah Coleman has talent, but I do think that RJ Harvey could provide value as like a flex play, and even more so if one or both of the other guys goes down. Um, Also, I'm sorry I had to go like way back here, but I did forget to mention, and it's kind of relevant with the Denver Broncos offense. But Jalen Waddle, I see the vision of him, but I just realized he is going the very top of tier 4. Is that right? Yeah, he's going to top tier 4. That's crazy. Okay, I don't know if I see that much vision with him.
Yeah, um, it's hard for me. I'm not the best person to ask. With the Broncos, I don't see it, but there's the truth is, I think that you're going to still have so much more of Mims and Troy Franklin involved than anyone is guessing here that it's going to be real annoying.
Yeah, and I think that's clearly a committee with the Broncos, but I think we have too much faith that it's going to be a committee with the Broncos and I mean, we're too little faith that the Broncos might just have a solid receiving core. And I get like Bills went all out for DJ Moore, traded a second for him. Broncos went all out for Jalen Waddle, traded a first for him. But I think the difference here is that the the Broncos receiving core, they made it to the AFC Championship without Waddle last year, and they still have all their guys. And the Bills like couldn't even reach it because they just did not have a receiving core. So Moore is like the piece that they didn't have depth and they needed that piece. Waddle, I think, is just a fantastic compliment who also could be an incredible alpha wide receiver one, but it's just riskier for me.
Yeah, yeah. He adds a lot of speed to that offense, which doesn't always translate necessarily to full fantasy production, but it can. I think he'll have blow up weeks and he'll have disappearance weeks. I just, boom or bust. It was. We saw the same thing with Cortland Sutton last year. If he caught the long bomb touchdown, you loved him, and if he didn't, you hated him.
Yeah.
I don't see a huge difference here. Troy Franklin is going to get so many targets, guys, and it's going to be so annoying to every single person because he's going to not do very much with them, and that's just what's going to happen. Stupid Broncos, man. Let me my downgrades. This is another one of those like you have to choose which one you're going to take. And I actually ended up downgrading both Jalen Warren and Rico Dowdle. I said, nah, one of those guys will probably be good. I'm not telling you to not take them. I just cannot watch the Steelers and root for their running backs with Aaron Rodgers getting mad every time one of them blows. Can you imagine the first time Rico Dowdle misses a pass protection? He's going to miss the rest of the game. They're not going to play him again. And you're just going to sit there with the 2 rushes for 8 yards and 1 catch for 0 yards and be like, that was it? That was the whole thing? And now he's banished because Aaron Rodgers gave him dirty side-eye? And you're going to feel real bad about it. So even if you win, you lose in this case. But I don't blame you for taking a shot on one of them. One of them could be a fantastic value. I'm out on Kyle Pitts. I don't think that he's earned it. Throw him back further. I can see where the upside comes from. I do get the upside argument, but it's just not there enough for me to like really even in tier 7.
Ahead of Sam Laporta for me, that's no. There's other guys around here I'd rather have than Pitts.
And then Alec Pierce, and it's not Alec Pierce is a weird situation for me where Philip Rivers really loved him, so he got a huge contract,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know that that's enough for me to really want to draft him and have him as like a starting piece on my team. If he was just purely depth as he has been and like a speculative ad of like the upside here could be huge, I think I like it. And I want to follow the money. That's usually generally a pretty good way to do things. I haven't seen it with Pierce in the way that I would hope to. I've watched him play and it hasn't looked like he's ever had like that dominating impact on a game.
Yeah, it's hard because he has those big like he's a great deep ball thrower, and I think he's a great real life football player, and he has fantasy moments obviously because he gets big gains, but it's hard. It's hard to like predict that to continue again because there's been some volatility in this offense in a lot of different ways. And I just love that this tier like over a quarter of tier 7 is just Steelers and Colts. like I you make a good point. Like with Rico Dottle and Jalen Warren, like there's definitely a possibility that both of those guys or one of those guys could be quite good, but also there's a very real possibility that both are just quite mid. And the same with DK and Michael Pittman. It's hard to like, and the same with Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. It's hard to like be like in on one or the other when they can coexist, but not in a lucrative way.
Okay, so I'll do this because tier 7 is gross, and tier 8 will be our last tier because it's also gross. It's huge, right? This is where you can tell the tiers start breaking down. They're like, just take whoever. It really doesn't matter. But so tier 7, my absolute favorite player to draft for my team in tier 7 right now, and I'm saying this and thinking about it at the same time because this is a question. I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
My top two, I'm in on Jackson Dart, probably as a quarterback that if I haven't taken one by now, I'd love to grab him here. And oh, there's some good ones. There's a couple good ones here. But I'd probably go with Chris Godwin as my second favorite
Hmm.
in this tier. Because right now, all of the bad things that I'm getting out of Tampa Bay, the one thing that hasn't been bad and has been knock on wood for sure here, is Chris Godwin stayed out of the news. And that might be the best place to be in Tampa Bay right now.
Is this in tier 7?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I see Godwin there, yes. Yeah, for me, it's relative to positional value. I think Chris Godwin is good, and I'm not even going to really admit this, but I think that Tony Pollard is just kind of staring me there in tier 7 as somebody that has a safe floor relative to all the other players in tier 7. There's not a lot of competition. There's volatility on the offense, but he is just there as that, you pivot RB, go wide receiver, tight end heavy. Tony Pollard is your RB2 with a stacked, Brock Bowers, uh, yeah, Jalen Hurts, um, Jamar Chase, and Devonta Smith, JS, whatever, is your RB2. Like, if you have a stacked team around that, you could do a lot worse.
I don't disagree. This is the tier where it's like, okay, if you're going hero RB, which is you get your one good one to start off with and you just wait. This is the tier where you're taking your second one probably because there's enough names to throw out here that are solid enough. They're going to get volume.
And of all those running backs, I think Tony Pollard has the clearest path to week by week success.
Yeah, and I'm okay with drafting running backs in murky situations generally. I really don't want the Pittsburgh situation. I'm just going to be real with you. Like Rico Dowdle looked like he could be phenomenal. Jalen Warren has looked like he could be phenomenal. Both of those guys, I'm talking crap about Aaron Rodgers. One of them might work out. I don't expect them to be consistent.
Yeah.
Too many personalities in this room. And also, this is where I said I'd downgrade Travion Henderson. Ramondre Stevenson is in tier 7. This is another one where if they were both in the same tier, I'd say just choose your favorite and go with them. I think you could, but Ramondre becomes a better value here for me.
Yeah.
Which I don't like being in on the guys with lower ceilings, but better value here is clear to me.
Yeah, I agree. I like it's all murky, but like Travion Henderson going ahead of other guys with more value like Jadarian Price or Vishal Tootin. It's like if I had to pick a Patriots running back, it would be the value for Mondre.
Okay, so the last tier we're going to talk about is tier 8 because after this it gets real just nasty and just make up your own opinions on everything. Tier 8 might actually also be that way. But so tier 8, let's say the players I'm looking at that I want to go, that I'm willing to go a little bit higher on, and this is pretty recent. Quentin Johnston is the first one that pops off that I'm like, well, he has all the potential in the world to definitely blow past this value. It's not guaranteed, but I like the upside there. Kyle Manon guy, even with the injury, the Bears just don't have another running back. And we saw Manon guy; he actually looked really solid. Isaiah Likely, I move him up to tier 7. Move Tucker Craft up 6. Isaiah Likely up to 7. We're good. Okay.
I respect it.
Yeah, Bill Krosky, and not really because I like him. He might be the starting running back that gets the volume, and going at pick 118 could also be great value for running back. Every single Saint that's in this tier, come in on Tyler Shook. Give me Jordan Tyson. If he misses the first 4 games, if you're getting him this late, I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Wide receiver 50 for Tyson is nice. Like
Yeah.
I do like that. Yeah.
Like if this is where he settles, please. Jalen Coker, I'm in on. This is a great value for him. Tyler Shook. If I didn't take Jackson Dart in the last tier, I'm taking Tyler Shook in this tier. And Malik Willis. Those are just the. Did I jump ahead of tier with Malik? I did, sure. But okay, yeah, put him in tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a pretty nasty tier, but I think if I had to like pick guys, it obviously depends on the makeup of my team. But if I'm looking for guys that have safe enough floors and actually have like pretty high ceilings, um, I think somebody that stands out to me is Kenneth Gainwell. Again, I don't want to hate on Bucky Irving, but I do think that Gainwell could be RB1 on the squad, and he was really great last year in Pittsburgh, playing opposite a fully healthy Jalen Warren, and they both coexisted and both had some really good games. And I think that if Gainwell continues to improve upon what he did last year in Tampa, and Bucky is missing any time of injury, then I think Gainwell can do even better than he did last year, and that's enough to warrant where he's going here.
And you don't think that was just a byproduct of how fantasy friendly Arthur Smith is, right?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, yeah, it's Gainwell surprised me last year because he's never been this elite running back, and he was on the Eagles for a while. I forget if he stopped somewhere else, but he never like was the alpha. But like we can't forget, like Warren was great last year, and I do view Rico Dottle and Kenneth Gainwell as very similar types of players with upside. And so Rico is now opposite Warren in Pittsburgh, but now Gainwell is out on his own. He got $10.5 million 2-year deal to play in Tampa. That's big money, and his competition is of course Sean Tucker, who I think will be involved, yes, but it's also just a bunch of injury risk guys, and Gainwell can catch some nice passes. So I'm not like I don't have high hopes for Gainwell, but I could see him being a very reliable flex. And in tier 8, some of these guys, there's not a lot of upside baked in. Um, I do think that Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt should be going ahead of Rashad White, and he's not. Um, Similar logic though to Kyle Manungai, I think Blake Corum can move up a tier for me. I just both the Rams and the Bears have such potentially great offenses, and I don't view these guys really as handcuffs anymore, as much as they are just 1Bs, and they could be legal. They could be league winners with an injury. So I would move Corum up, Manungai up, and Matthew Golden is similar. Like I think he has a safe enough floor and a very very high ceiling. Uh, and I would definitely move Matthew Golden up. He was a sleeper for me. He's going at the very end here. He's going below, like he's going almost a round after Jordan Mason, which is disgusting. So I would definitely move Golden up, at least to the top of this tier.
I was listening to someone talk about Jordan Mason, man, and they were saying, "Hey, well, if you look at all of his running back metrics, he's actually elite." And I'm like, "Dog, you did not watch one Minnesota Vikings game last year because he could have not had more opportunity placed right in front of him in a situation where they desperately needed someone to come through and say, "Hey, Jordan, you can be the guy," and he's just stunk it up. Like he was so bad.
It's just, yeah, just
Get him out of here, man. He needs to be going around 16. I don't even like Aaron Jones that much, but like Aaron Jones is so clearly the superior talent. Anyway,
yeah, it's just,
I don't need
Jordan, it's very very stinky. but I do like the last five picks here. I do like quite a bit. It's Jordan Tyson at his value. You know, hamstring injuries suck, but man, if he comes back healthy and like is fully healthy by November, he could be wide receiver one on this team with that could be a great offense. That's
Oh,
worth the risk for me.
like he could like be the Odell Beckham of the year, where you forget about him because he's injured to start off, and then he comes back halfway through, and you're like, oh my god, who is this dude? He's a touchdown
100% because I'm not saying he's OBJ, but he could be because he's in terms of talent, he is the same similar like college profile as OBJ. OBJ, missed the first month of his rookie year on the Giants. Like it's worth the risk for me. I mean, you just end very nicely here with Jalen Coker, Xavier Worthy, Matthew Golden. Xavier Worthy, I think, is the biggest question mark here for me. But Coker and Golden, I like quite a bit here, and like even Worthy, like who knows? He could be great. He's going below Jordan Mason. He's going around after Jordan Mason. I'd rather have all these guys after Jordan Mason.
machine. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Um, Downgrades. We just talked about Jordan Mason a lot. I'll go ahead and throw him out there. I actually didn't mark him because I didn't want to think about him very much. Travis Kelsey's a downgrade for me. I think he's getting name value pushed up here. Like Juwan Johnson around
Yeah,
later. Give me Juwan.
yeah,
Jake, not around later, a tier later. J.K. Dobbins, because of the injury, he's a player who I would worry about injury with if he gets hurt. I'm gonna pay attention to that.
yeah. He could have just a great few week run. I like to like draft him, perhaps even here, and then like trade him after a few weeks.
Yeah, it's fair. Makai Lemon, it's not the skill limit of the offense. It's actually just again rookies missing this much time early on.
Yeah,
And I don't see him like with Jordan Tyson. I see a clear route to like a 1B situation. With Makai Lemon, I'm not seeing his clear route right now.
yeah.
Eventually, I think he'll get there, but right this season, I don't really trust it. I think Casey Concepcion, it's not the player, it's the situation. You, I don't know what round I would be feeling comfortable taking my first Cleveland Brown receiver in, but apparently it's
Well,
not round 10.
so Denzel Boston's going wide receiver 56, and Concepcion's going wide receiver 49.
Jerry
It's pretty
Judy, I think, is
close.
somewhere in between there too.
Yeah, these guys. They next year.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Please wait a year. Let him get Archie Manning. If he'll play in Cleveland, there's probably a good chance he doesn't. Um, yeah, I don't know. The rest of the players that we talked about in round 8, big. Just if you have a sleeper here that you believe in, this is where you just take them. It doesn't really matter what round they're in, right? Like
Yeah,
you at tier 8 is where you start just saying what players do I actually want on my team that are left, and just start grabbing them, nabbing them. Who cares what round they're going, really?
we have to go into specifics, but there are players in tier 9 and even tier 10 that I like more than the players in tier 8. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. No. I'll throw out two names, and you throw out two names. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Of these tier
for
9 players and tier 10, if you've got them written down, that you would take
yeah. Let's
your favorites from these tiers.
okay.
Um.
You start. I'll look through these here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start my. When I get to this point, I'm looking at upside pretty much almost exclusively. I just want the player that could pop out of nowhere and be a huge part of your team. So there's players I've talked about that are going in this tier that like in the sleeper episode that I would love to have on my team if I need that position. But if I'm looking at pure upside, the players who I'd be excited to get right here,
Mm-hmm.
um, Dejuan Stribling.
Yeah,
With all the injuries in San Francisco, he's got a clear path to being a major wide receiver in San Francisco. One of those wide receivers from San Francisco are going to be amazing.
he
And
looked great in the preseason too.
mhm, he did. He looks like he's going to be that guy who can catch everything that's thrown at him. And if that's the case, he's gonna knock this pick out the park. And the thing about Dejuan is that pick is gonna rise. If he has even one more preseason game like that, that pick's gonna shoot up to like round 6, almost
Yeah,
guaranteed. Um, I'm gonna leave you one of these guys because I know you're gonna want to talk about him, so I'm just gonna not say that. Uh, well, no, okay, we'll trade off here because I know which one you're gonna say, and I'm gonna say Trey Tucker.
well, so yeah, I guess I could say I was looking at Jalen Naylor. I talked about him a lot as a sleeper, so he's one of my favorite guys to get here. Um, I guess apart from that, another guy that I've been high on. I think just there's just some really good. I'll just say there's some really good tight end value here. You know, Chika Kwanko stands out to me. AJ Barner, um, even Hunter Henry. He just got a payday. Like I think this is a solid tight end punt range where if you didn't get one of the top 6, 7, 8 guys, like I'd be excited to get some of these. Over waiting even longer. There's at least a clear path to some targets here. Um, and I guess I will just I guess I'm just thinking out loud. But the guy that I will pick him this year, but I'd be excited to get, and this is kind of banking on who he's been as a player and injury, so it's risky. But Tyler Algier in this round, I think it could be a great handcuff if James Conner and Jeremiah Love don't play the full season. I think Algier's done it before, and I think he's one of my favorite handcuffs to get in this range.
Similar, actually. I'm a little bit on the Charbonnet in this range. Just not. There's no excitement there though. That's the issue. There's not really excitement. There's just someone who could produce like for 3/4 of the season for you if he comes back and does what he does. No, I agree with you. This one actually, this tier feels a little bit better than the tier before it. The tier before it is like that last well, let's try to play it a little bit safe. And let's try to, we'll try to get a piece of our team that's gonna contribute. And then this tier is like, hey, just let's get someone who's gonna throw some upside. And I'm an upside drafter, so like a lot of what you're hearing from me is like, I want the number one player or someone who I can punt to waivers. I don't really want the others in between.
This is where you get excited about your bench.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of guys. We can bring up names, but we've been here for an hour and 40 minutes. Let's close it here. So that's kind of our tier look over. We'll have a couple more videos coming out for you. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm sorry that I released 2 episodes in 2 days. There was an issue on the software end. It ain't an issue no more, I'll tell you what. But so
now you got 3 hours of entertainment though. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. You get to hear our sleepers immediately followed by our tier list where we talk about right up to our sleepers. Yeah, William, good job. Doink out.
Doink out.